Hi folks, I'm going to take you through something quickly which has come to my attention. Basically, it would seem that many folks out there have been capturing the hours out as if they were minutes, as opposed to a decimal. So for instance, you can see there with the first record, they've captured 1.3 thinking it's 1 hour and 30 minutes, which is actually 1.5 hours. So in actual fact, this is just a normal number, so it should be represented as 1.5. Now this problem gets resolved with the update that I did about a week ago, because now when you add a record, so if we add a new record now, as soon as you click in there, it brings up the hours in and out range. So it's not something you have to worry about anymore, because I could put anything in here. Let's say 10:55, so that represents so it works out what the decimal is automatically. You tell it it's private, and it puts it in there, so it's taking control for you. But now, what are we going to do about the situation where the records prior to this were sitting in minute form? So what we're going to do is we're going to convert everything to decimals, and this is a one-off, folks. So if it's not actually that complicated. I'm going to show you exactly how to go through it. You can follow exactly what I do. You don't even have to know anything about how to use Excel or anything like that. I'm going to show you exactly what to do. And then, once this is done, I will work at getting it to display in a more sort of friendly manner. So in other words, it'll display as 1 hour instead of showing say 2:42 as it does in this record, 2.42. It'll show as 2 hours and 25 minutes. But for now, this is not actually a problem. The decimals that showing as the decimals is actually a more accurate way of doing it. And it tallies up the hours more accurately in terms of the hours up adding to an accumulated day's leave. And what's more is that because you have the time out, time in feature that was added a couple months ago, you can actually see, because it was from 8:30 to 10:55. And so what I might do is instead of showing this column as the actual decimals, that'll just happen in the background, and what you'll see is it's quite simply 10:55 minus 8:30, which will show 2 hours and 25 minutes. Right, so what we're going to do is I don't want you to do this in the actual hours out screen. Please don't do it in the actual hours out screen, because there's code and functionality that happens in here that when you click on these things, it causes things to happen. And so if I went and clicked here, for instance, on this 0.3, it's going to go and add 0.3 hours to the person's accumulated time off, which is obviously not what you want, because it's not a new record, it's an old record. And there's going to be a few more changes that I'm going to be adding to this. For instance, it would seem that in the past, when my father created this section, there was code behind it which said if you're a teacher, X amount of hours before the accumulated time adds a day's leave. If you're a non-teacher, X hours, and my dad just hard-coded that into the code upon requests. For some schools, and this must have been some sort of departmental thing, for a teacher it was 7 hours, for a non-teacher it was 8 hours. And there were other schools that said no, we want it to be 8 hours for both. And I'm not quite sure, so I'm going to add to global settings in a future update. I'm going to put hours out for teacher for the day, hours out for a non-teacher for the day, and you specify what hours it is, so that we don't have to hard code it for each and every person. It'll be user defined, and it'll always look that up to see how many hours it must accumulate before adding a day's leave, depending on whether it's a regular staff member or an educator. Um, in any event, so what I want to do first is just for us to get these numbers into decimals, and you know, as I said, it's going to look complex, but it really isn't. Okay, now the first thing to do here is to note that since I put the update out about a week ago, you would be having your hours out. Now, hours out is the column in question here. The hours out is hours out for private reasons. Okay. So what you've got to do is you've got to go to your staff absent table, right? Open up your navigation panel, like I've done. Click on tables, right? And in your search bar here, if you don't have a search bar, just right click over there and choose search bar, and this search bar will pop up. Type in staff, and your staff absent table, you'll see your staff absent table. Double click it to open it. And so the first thing I want to do is I want to isolate the records where you may have been previously entering minutes. So for instance, if you look here, so they put 45 minutes in, right? So this should technically represent as 0.75, yeah, 3/4 of an hour. So you can see, you would be able to tell from when I put the update out where it was forcing you to use the interface, you know, the range interface, time in and from and to, and therefore working out the decimals itself, compared to when you were entering them manually. Now, I would love to say that you can just click on this time away from and time away to and filter on the blanks, because this may have only been getting recorded since you started using the interface, but these fields did exist before and there were people that were entering them manually, so it might not possibly be as easy as just filtering on the blanks here. But you will know, as I say, from about a week ago when this update was implemented, you can tell and you know as the capturer whether you were entering by minutes and when last you actually physically manually entered into that hours out column when using the hours out feature, because remember, as soon as you click in this column, it brings up that interface, and whereas before you would be entering manually into this column, and now I've disallowed that. You can't do that anymore. You've got to use the interface so that it works out everything for you. So you've got to know you've got to know, and you'll be able to see by looking at your numbers as well, and you can get hold of us and ask to help pick it out, but we're going to need you to be able to inform us as well, and work out the date from when last you would have been capturing minutes instead of decimals. So in this case it's fairly simple in my demo version. So I've opened the table. I can see that from the 7th of the 9th is when the interface was started to be used, and the last record was this one where the minutes were. So I'm going to right click on the date for that. I'm going to say include everything on or before that date. Okay, so now I've got only records where the capture was entering as minutes and not decimals. Now in this table also are recorded the normal daily absentee records, so when someone's absent for a whole day, and in all those cases the hours out is naught. So what you want to do is you want to isolate only the records where we captured for just when a staff member left for X amount of hours during the day. Okay, so right click and say choose does not equal naught, and so now we've isolated all those records where a staff member was out for private reasons for a few hours during the day. Okay, so basically they use the sign in, sign out register. And we've also isolated all the records where you used, where you entered using minutes as a fraction as opposed to a decimal as a fraction. So I mean, essentially the computer's seeing that as 1 1/3 hours, whereas you entered it thinking it was 1 hour and 30 minutes. Okay, so we're going to convert those. So what we're going to do is highlight this column, okay, and copy it. Now we're going to go straight to Excel and we're going to work in Excel. So don't close this screen, this table, or change the order or anything in any way, because we're going to go to Excel, we're going to convert it, we're going to come back and we're going to paste straight over this. Alright, so leave it exactly as it is. Open Excel. Now ignore these columns here, I was just working it out. And right click and paste. Okay, then it puts the heading in there, so just delete, shift cells up, and that will be your data set there. Okay, now what the first thing we want to do is we want to isolate the hours away from the minutes. So the first thing you do is you type in equals int, and as I say, you don't have to know anything, just do exactly what I'm doing. Alright, and close brackets, so equals int a1. Okay, so that's isolated the hours. So basically what you're telling it is I only want the integer. Okay, and paste all the way down, and you can check. Okay, so where it says 4.3 it says 4 and 3 and 4, and where there's no decimal it just puts the whole number. Okay, now what we want to do is we want to isolate the decimal and turn it into the minutes. So 0.3 must show 30 minutes. Okay, so we put this formula in here. Now don't worry about how it works, it just does. Okay, so let me just, okay, so I'll read it out to you basically. So we want it to say equals a1, because that's where the number is that we're dealing with, that we want to isolate. Okay, minus int n1. Okay, so we're taking the 1, basically we're saying 1.3, which is a1, minus the whole number, int, remember the int a1. Alright, trying to explain this now, and I probably shouldn't, but anyway, it doesn't matter. So we're saying a1, which is the whole number, which is the number itself, 1.3, minus int a1, which is just the 1. So 1.3 minus 1 gives you 0.3, multiplied by 100. Okay, which is going to give you, it's going to give you 30 minutes. It should do a1. I think we need another bracket in front of that. Right. So you type in this exact thing there. Okay, equals open bracket a1 close bracket minus int open bracket a1 close bracket multiplied by 100. Okay, copy that, drag your cells down and paste. Okay, now you can see where it's isolated all of these and turned them into minutes. So there, for instance, was your 45 0.45, and it's turned it into 45 minutes. Now what we want to do is we want to turn those minutes into the decimal that they are. So 30 minutes should equal 0.5, right, which is 0.5 of an hour. So that quite simply you just say equals that divided by 60 minutes. Okay, and there's your 0.5. So we copy and paste down, and and so now we have isolated the 1 hour, and we've turned the minutes part of the number into the decimal. So now it's quite as simple as just saying equals that plus that, oh sorry, nope, not that, plus that, and we've successfully converted the number into, we've successfully converted the minutes captured as a decimal, erroneously captured as a decimal, into the actual represented time in minutes. Right, so we go this, and we click paste. Okay, and now we say copy. You go back to your table, and we say right click, paste. Okay, if any of you are worried about doing this, remember that you can always make a backup of your data first before you do it. But as I say, if you follow my steps exactly, exactly as I've explained, and you operate step for step as I've done, you'll be fine. You can't go wrong. As I say, if you need to get hold of us in terms of, now let's not have all half of KZN schools phoning us and asking us to do it for them. Okay, this is a one-off, as I say, because we won't have to do this every time. Once we've got it in place, then we've gotten the data jacked up to what it needs to be. Then it's fine. It's all set. So we're not going to be able to do it for everybody. So please try. But if you're not sure about what your last record was that you might have captured as minutes instead of a decimal, and from when the new interface started capturing it as a decimal for you, you can ask us to have a look, and we'll check. And I mean, if you get completely stuck, fine, absolutely no problem. Give us a shout. But as I say, we'll come to a grinding halt if we have absolutely everyone asking us to do it for them. Okay, and then there will be more involved in this, as I'll be adding a feature that goes and does a recalibration and a recalculation of the total hours out and the accumulated time. And obviously I'll explain that further in the next tutorial. But that is just what you need to do in the back end, just to get your data consistent for the time being. Thank you.